Hello everybody and welcome back to Community FC. We've got another kind of summer special episode coming. The Premier League starts this week. We are very excited. We are going to be watching all the games, I'm sure, getting into it, FPL, all that good stuff. Speaking of FPL, don't forget to join our league. We've put our link out on socials and we'll have the code below. Before we get into the episode, let me welcome my constant co-host as always, Rich. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thank you for having me as always, Aidan.
My absolute pleasure. I mean, chatting football is literally what we do anyway, so it made total sense to just keep doing the pod. But
Absolutely.
This episode, we thought that the best way we can do it was we're not going to go into predictions of like a whole table like we've seen lots of format and stuff do. We just want to get our general thoughts out. We're going to go into like the top teams. We're going to go into a bit of transfer stuff as well, like we did last week, but maybe just talking about positions and our overall thoughts, our personal opinions on where we think certain teams might come, because everybody always has that one where people go, well, I'm not sure about that, I don't agree with that, and has a bit of a controversial opinion. So we just thought it's a nice little episode to put out, and everybody's watching all these videos because we're all excited to see the season start. It's that calm before the storm. Everyone's got the high hopes of, we're going to do so much better than last year, or we're going to reach this certain position in the table, and that's sometimes crushed on the first week. So now you've got this little bit of hope until the opening fixture. So where do you want to start, Rich? I'll let you kick off wherever you want to start.
Should we start at the top?
Yeah.
And work our way down?
Let's go for it. So if we're starting at the top, I mean, we're not going to go through the whole thing, but I think we can do some obvious ones. So we haven't talked about this, but I'm fairly sure we're going to be exactly the same page as last year. Are we on the same page that City are going to win again?
Yes.
I mean, I think that's obvious, right?
Hands down. Look, I know they lost to Liverpool in the Community Shield.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just the Community Shield.
Yeah.
And honestly, like we said before, I think Man City they've added nicely to their squad now.
Yeah.
And I think let's give Haaland a little bit of time to get into it. I think he's going to become unstoppable.
I mean, I completely agree with you, and I think everyone gets so carried away. Of course they're going to. It's the first quote-unquote competitive game of the 2023 season, but like 2022-23. But I'm just like, is it though? Like, because exactly the same thing had happened. If Haaland had scored and hadn't missed the sitter and it had been reversed with Núñez, everyone would have been exactly the same storyline for everyone else. I just think there's been so much build-up for Haaland. It's almost the villain role to play, that if he fails, it's funnier than if Núñez fails. So yeah. It's pretty classic, but that is pretty much the only question mark that I have against City is how long will it take for Haaland to bed in? And my personal opinion is I think he's going to score this weekend. In the
yeah, I do as well. And it will come as no surprise to anyone that I put him in fact with the team, because I think he's going to be points merchant.
I am happy to reveal he is also in my team. We won't go too much, we're keeping these secret this year. We've got a couple of leagues going. But yeah, I mean, lots of people, I think that's a no-brainer for lots of things. So that really is my only point around City. I think he'll hit the ground running. Even if it takes a couple of games, he's going to get there. He's just a machine. He just has a bit of an injury problem. That is the thing he needs to avoid. But apart from that, City win the league. I think they're going to be comfortable this year, and I think Grealish and KDB and everyone like that are going to be having absolute joy with a target man like that up top. However,
and I think that's the other thing. I'll just quickly, before we finish on City, I think Grealish got a lot of stick last season.
He did,
but he wasn't playing with a target man.
No,
in fact, they weren't playing with a striker at all for most of the season. So I think let's give him a little bit of leeway on last year, and I think this season, I think he'll probably come alive.
I do. I completely agree with you. Actually, I think that Jack Grealish is going to have a fantastic season, because I think they've sorted out with their wingers. Again, I know he's going to have to share time with Foden, and he might play everywhere else, and Pep Roulette comes into it. But I just feel that target man is way better for a Grealish type figure when he's running to the wing or running to the line. He's going past people. He's looking for that target man, and you even saw that in some of their preseason games. So it's one of them. But speaking of, we might as well go to who I think is probably going to be second. Again, I'm not sure if that's the same for you or not. I'm going to talk about Liverpool. So this one is interesting for me because I should say, start off with, do you think they're going to be second as well? Or
I have put Liverpool second.
I think it's a safer bet. I've seen some people say some outrageous stuff that they think they're going to do a lot worse, but I think for me a few questions got answered in that game as well, because the biggest questions I had were, well, three things really. Can they be, like, keep the same form without someone like Mane to drag them when Salah or someone's not, playing so well? Can he be there to boost them up a bit? Potentially, because I think Diaz is continuing to look sharp again, like he did. He seems to have no downtime by changing leagues. He was just straight into it and absolutely mincing everyone. Salah looks pretty good again, like he looks sharp, and that was my other question, because he didn't look the same since those two Senegal games, of losing both times to them. And then obviously Núñez, but I think I still stand by what I said last week, and I think that Haaland will outperform Núñez by quite a bit. But obviously there was a reason that United and lots of other clubs were interested in Núñez, because clearly he's talented. It was just there wasn't as much pedigree there as Haaland. So it's one of them. But I think Liverpool will do extremely well. I think they'll get a second. I just don't see them getting that title spot at all.
Yeah, the other thing to point out, I think, about Liverpool is the same kind of problems they have in defence. If they have a couple of injuries, they've not really got a lot of depth.
Yeah.
In that defence, and I think that's always the problem with Liverpool for the last 3-4 years. Is if Van Dijk goes injured, your defence is half of what it was before.
Or if they lose one of the fullbacks, that's half their attacking output, isn't it?
Well, this is the other thing, because we've spoken before on the podcast about how Trent are phenomenal going forward, but defensively, I don't think they're very good. They certainly aren't the best fullbacks in the league defensively. And going forward, though, outrageously good. So I think if you lose Van Dijk, like they have done before for a large part of the season, I think that's when you start to worry about Liverpool, because then it'll be Liverpool involved where, we're going to try and score more goals than you. Yeah,
I think that's always their mentality, isn't it? I mean, it's a bold claim on the fullbacks, but it's one that people.
It is what it is.
I mean, absolutely. I think there's lots of great defenders, but there's no denying their attacking ability. So now I'm happy to talk about. I think we'll probably end up talking top 6 anyway. But I think moving on down, it don't necessarily have to talk in order or anything. But do we think? If we're going to say those last 2 Champions League spots, do you have someone in mind for them? I've been umming and ahhing, and I keep changing my mind on certain ones.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm clear on, I think, at the moment, is that I think United will get that 6th spot. United will finish 5th or 6th.
Yep.
I don't think they're quite ready yet to challenge for the Champions League.
I mean,
honestly,
let's start there then. I mean, this will obviously be a tiny little piece from me, I'm sure. I mean, realistically, like, I would love to sit here and say, again, as a football fan, you're always going to be split in 2. So I'm pretty smart. Sorry, it's not smart. Sensible football fan at times when I'm quite realistic. That's the word I'm really looking for. And this, like, I'll go into a game and be like, yeah, we're going to draw this, we're going to do whatever. Like, I'm not always like, we're going to win. However, my heart will always say top 4's a potential. Top 4's a potential. We can do it. I just don't think. I think you're right. I think 5th or 6th. I'd love to say 5th, but we'll see. I think, again, not going to spend crazy amounts talking about United. I think everyone can see like what's happening. I'll scroll down my notes. So, I think the biggest thing that I have to say is we're still not clear on the signing situation. Like on a few people, like the Frankie thing. No idea what's going to happen with that, whether he's actually going to come or not. Certain reports saying that we're going to try until the end of August to try and get him. Who knows? The Ronaldo thing isn't sorted, because it looks like he probably will stay now. But, I don't think he's going to be playing on the weekend. I think Martial's going to start ahead of him because he's been there for the whole pre-season. It seems Ronaldo and a couple of other players left at half-time on the weekend from pre-season stuff. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to get into, and I just don't know if that's gonna have gonna work for us if he does leave. All that kind of stuff is up in the air. But also, I don't think we've necessarily made all the signings yet as well. So there's talks about Sesko, the same as Chelsea looking at him. There's loads of potential that we could be bringing in, but I'm not sure that our signings we've made so far are enough to get us that top 4 spot. I think all 3 of them are brilliant signings. Seeing them in pre-season, I'm very excited about all of them. Looking forward to seeing what happens. But I don't think Ten Hag has sorted out who's that starting defence yet. Because, we saw Varane and Martinez play again together on one pre-season, and then we saw Maguire play on the other one, with various other centre-backs. I don't know if he's got that sorted yet because he hasn't had enough time with the team, and so I'm not sure with the signings that we've got I can see us going for anything more than that, unless I'm horribly mistaken and then the other teams are going to drop, and I think that will be more the situation that other teams will let us get that place rather than us claiming it this season. I think we can go back to last season of Roundup Review, and I said a million times, second year I'm expecting more from Ten Hag. I'm thinking of a trophy, even if it's not the Prem, it's something else. And I think 3 years if he's backed, then we're really going to push for that title charge.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I think it's a realistic shout as well.
Yeah,
I think he'll do better than he did last season for sure.
He's got a clear plan, and I really like the manager, and he's not taking anyone's bullshit this season. He's already getting players, and so I'm forever hopeful, and I'm forever hoping that we have good attacking, fun football under Ten Hag, but we will see.
Well, other than that, so I think. See, the thing is, so there's the three clubs here that I've got, and I'm sure you've got them as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's Chelsea, Tottenham, and Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not going to place him in a position because I really think this could be quite fluid. But what I will do is I'll give you a quick kind of look at how I see these three clubs this year. So I'm going to start with Tottenham, and I think Tottenham will do very well this year.
Yeah.
And I think realistically, they're probably a shoe-in for top four. I think they've got some sensible signings. They've not lost anyone. And Conte has gotten playing really well. And they're the opening game for us on Saturday.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm a little bit concerned. I think they're doing really well. Arsenal, as we said last week, have had an outstanding transfer window. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. The only thing I will say about, for some reason, they'll just go through patches being terrible.
I mean, that is
Arsenal. For no particular reason. So if I was to hazard a guess, I'd probably put them. And then Chelsea are a weird one because, I don't know what's happened with their transfer window this season, but it's just been awful. It seems like everyone they've been linked with has been poached by Barcelona. Which had been a constant source of amusement in our group chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jamie. But it's true, isn't it? They signed Sterling, which I think we said last week, is going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
I do think they're maybe a couple of players short of really challenging Liverpool.
Yeah.
And City.
I think that's super fair. So I would say I am with you for basically everyone. However, I think I will take a bold step and say that, well, not that bold in some senses, but I think I'm happy to lock Spurs for third this year. And I do think that it's going to be between Arsenal and Chelsea for fourth because of the transfer window. So I know that's slightly bolder, but I just think from what we're seeing, unless something drastically happens with those Spurs signings with injuries or anything like that, or they don't bed in and all this kind of stuff, I think, as you said, got them playing great. They look like they're forced to be reckoned with. And if Son and Kane carry on their pre-season form, which, yes, you should be worried for the weekend, I think, unfortunately for you, they look like they're going to be really into it and scoring for fun again. So, but as I said, Arsenal, I honestly, they're so dark horses this season. I wouldn't be surprised. I genuinely would not be surprised. I can't believe I'm about to say this. I genuinely would not be surprised if I'm shocked to see them third because they could just have it. And it for me, that entirely depends on whether Gabriel Jesus stays fit because he is very injury prone. But if he has a good run, he's been on fire for them so far. Arteta's building that team. They've made some really interesting, but I think smart decisions like Martin Odegaard becoming their captain, integral part, being amazing for them in pre-season again, like that captain's role, but all the assists he's getting, like their team is just looking good. The only question mark I have, apart from, as you mentioned, they hilariously just drop points wherever because they just do. That's just Arsenal, and Arsenal fans, I'm sure you agree with that because you see it all the time. But also, there's still some question marks. I think they've had a great window, but there's some question marks on where some of them are going to play, like the Zinchenko situation. Yeah. So that's an interesting one. But yeah, Chelsea, The reason I'm so up and down on Chelsea, if they get the signings they want, I could easily see them getting top four. If they don't, I could see them slipping out, and that's the difference. But I think this week is going to be, it's already started with a couple of signings, but I think this week is only going to ramp up. And by the first episode of the Roundup Review for Season 3, we could be singing a whole different hymn sheet for Chelsea, and that's why they're so up in the air.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. I mean, but that's exciting. You know, that's a very different look than we've seen before. And some teams that are, you know, doing bits and building potentially on some form from last year. So here's an interesting one. I'm going to put them in the same bracket together. So we've got two sets of fans that are both hoping for the same thing and both kind of seemingly promise the same thing, but I'm not sure they're going to get there. So I'm talking about the European spots as well, and I'm thinking like Europa Conference League, and it's Villa and Newcastle. What do you have to think about them? Do we think we're going to get there or not?
No.
For either?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, Villa fans are deluded. I don't. I literally have no idea why they keep thinking they're going to get. Like last season, they were like, "This is going to be amazing. We're going to get it," and they had an all right season.
Mm-hmm.
They had a season that I'd expect Villa to get, but you know, there were Villa fans who were slating me on Twitter because I called them deluded for thinking they were going to get Europe last season. Realistically, has that Villa squad improved to the level to get European football?
No,
not at all. Not in the slightest. You had Coutinho for half a season last season. He didn't do that much.
Yeah, that is the point that I would have as well if I was going to say anything about Villa. I don't think they're going to. I think they might do better than they did last year. But I don't think they're potentially going to reach the heights that I've seen some people put them at ridiculous things on certain podcasts or predictions and stuff really high up, because I don't think they've had the transfer window to see that, and I don't think Coutinho is going to do it for a whole season. He's going to fall off again, and that is their kind of, you know, big pull from last season. So I'm not sure.
I feel like they're a team that everyone like thinks it's cool to say they're going to be, you know, European football.
Is it Gerrard doing it? I don't know.
Definitely, there's some sort of Gerrard bias. There's 100% of Gerrard bias. But I don't know. I just think that people like Villa will do it, and they'll forget about all of the terrible results last season.
Yeah. So moving on to Newcastle, then, what do we think? Do we think they're going to get it, or do we think close? What's the vibe for them?
Honestly, I don't think they will.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't think that they've made the signings they need to take that next step yet. And to be fair, what I will say is I respect that they're building slowly,
mm-hmm.
and they're building a solid base.
Yeah,
I respect that. But I don't think they're there yet. If you look at the competition, that, you know, realistically, who's going to be looking at that spot? I mean, you've got to be safe at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Are probably nailed on for that 7th spot.
Yeah.
They have not only had a phenomenal season last.
Good transfer window.
Great transfer window. They look to have kept hold of Declan Rice,
which is huge for them. Yeah, exactly.
Which is massive for them. They've still got, you know, they kept hold of all of their best players from last season. They're only going to get better because of the purchases they've made in transfer.
Yeah.
For me, that's a no-brainer. West Ham are 7th, and to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if you see him sneak in. The signings Newcastle have made, sure, they're good, but are they going to get up to that top 7? Are they going to be challenging West Ham? I don't think on the face of it they are. Obviously, you know what football's like. It's a fickle beast.
Yeah.
You know, we could come out and Newcastle could win the first 10 games on the trot.
Yeah.
And then we'd be talking a different story. But football's football. Sometimes you expect things to happen and they don't happen. Sometimes you don't expect things to happen.
So I think you're right, but I don't think they're going to be that far off, is my prediction. I think they're going to finish somewhere. Again, I know this is very loose, but somewhere in. I think they're going to get top 10. That's the easiest way to say it. I think that they and a few other teams will be challenging, maybe not the actual spot, but getting very close to that European spot. And then I think next season, if they build on again with signings, that's when they're going to clinch it. So I see them much closer than I do Villa. I think Villa will be, you know, obviously behind Newcastle. Again, it could be one of those teams pushing, but I just think they're going to probably finish more like 11th, 12th than maybe 9th or 10th. So you know, there's a couple of fierce teams around there that are going to look for that, but I think Newcastle are building something good, and I just don't think it's going to be this season just. A really random one that I've seen, because in that conversation, some people have been so up and down on them. So some people I've seen have gone, We're talking Leicester City, sorry. So Leicester, they've gone. Some people have gone. I think they're going to do incredibly well. They've kept most of their squad. They're going to do this and stuff. I'm literally sitting here. I don't know what your opinions are. Going. I think they're going to do awful this season.
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to be bottom half.
Yeah.
And I would say realistically, they're going to have I reckon they'll have a fight to stay out 5. Leicester we spoke about it last week. Mm-hmm. They've lost some key players.
And are still going to lose, yeah. Apparently.
And are still going to lose some key players. And you've got the likes of Tielemans, who even if he stays, he's got a year left in his contract. So he's not going to care, really, is he? But not only that, like, they've been linked with 2 Southampton defenders. Mm-hmm. Well, they've been linked with Bednarek. Having already signed Bertrand and Vestergaard, they linked with Bednarek. That would be 3 out of the 4 defenders that lost 9-0 to them. And they now also, today, have been linked with Alex McCarthy.
They're just going for, like, well, McCarthy not so much, but they're just going for, like, the older guard greatest hits from the Southampton backline. Yeah, and, like, realistically, all players that I've been very happy to get rid of and to see go, to be honest. They haven't been linked with anyone of any quality. Yeah.
And arguably for a couple of years. And I think it might be time for Rodgers to go. I
just don't see what they can do. If they lose Maddison and they lose Tielemans, right? And there's a potential, like, they could lose Harvey Barnes, potentially. It's not going to happen. They're definitely losing Schmeichel to Nice, I think it is, isn't it? And they haven't really replaced him with anyone. Who and as much as people always say, oh, yeah, but Jamie Vardy's going to bank, I think we've already seen at the end of last season. I'm not saying he's done. I'm just saying he's definitely on the decline. And you're going to keep...
I'd go out on a limb and say he's done.
You think Vardy's completely done?
He is out. How long was he out for last season?
He is very, very injury prone.
He was injury prone at his peak.
Yeah.
Now he's what, like 36?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I just don't think he's got that much left in him. I personally don't think he's done. I think he'll play for at least 2 more seasons in the Prem, but I think he's on the decline, and people can't expect him to bang the same numbers he did a few years ago when he's challenging for the Golden Boot.
Yeah, and plus his wife's a grass.
I mean, well, who knows, that may be affecting him off the pitch as well. But I just think that was one that I was just like, really? Like, some people are doing them, like, so dirty in terms of, like, saying they're going to be relegated. But I don't think it's going to be that. But I've seen some people go, I think they're going to get, like, 9th. And I'm like, you're joking. They're going to be, like,
yeah, they won't get relegated, but they won't get 9th.
I think they're going to be literally somewhere from, like, 14th to... Yeah, something like that. I don't know. Not that high. Anyway, why don't we talk about your team for a second, and then we'll go on that afterwards to relegation zone, and then 2 teams that I think are going to be very close to the relegation zone. So let's start this off by, I'll pass it over to you with the narrative that I've seen going around, which I know you're going to want to talk about, so I'll tee you up in that sense. So again, speaking of stuff that we've seen, yet again, Southampton are in people's relegation not even relegation. So yeah, being relegated. People are putting you as the one, not the first to go, obviously, but you're the last to go. If that makes any sense. What do you have to say to those people who keep doing this year on year?
Let me get on my soapbox in a minute, because this is ridiculous. Every season since 2015, I think we've been like a shoo-in to be relegated. Every single bloody season. It's the exact opposite to the Aston Villa thing. Everyone thinks, let's put. That's an edgy little fun thing to do. Let's also put Southampton in the relegation every single season. Mm-hmm. Last season, we were maybe like 3 or 4 points off of Villa.
Yeah.
After all of the talk that Villa fans were having, signing Coutinho, getting Gerrard in, 3 or 4 points. Why is it that Southampton had a terrible season? Now, don't get me wrong, that decline at the end was steep.
Yeah, very.
Was very, very steep.
But the start.
And the start, although, was outrageously good.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest problem, and you would have heard it all of last season, was how Ralph Hasenhüttl had an inability to change his tactic. Mm-hmm. I don't believe he was supported correctly by his coaching staff. I think he had a lot of yes men and a lot of coaches who weren't necessarily the right fit. They might be technical coaches, but they weren't the assistants.
Yeah.
He now has an actual assistant first-team manager.
Surprise.
Ruben Sellers, who is, by all accounts, a very, very exciting prospect in coaching. He it wouldn't surprise me if the plan was, so Ralph's got another 2 years, well, 2 seasons, including this one, left in his contract. It wouldn't surprise me if we were grooming Sellers to take over Ralph.
Interesting.
Ralph has said he wants to retire after this. Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Sellers was going to be, if we were grooming that transition period to happen. So I think he's going to be, and already you can see in the videos of the training that the club puts out, Sellers is out there taking the sessions, he's shouting, he's being engaging. You can see him in the pre-season as well. It's not just Ralph cutting a kind of lone figure on the sideline. Sellers there now, and that means that hopefully Ralph isn't going to. He'll have someone there to bounce off the ideas. Listen, it's not worth it, change it up. And already we've seen different formations pre-season, right? So we got that, the whole and we've also got more coaching staff in as well. Three sacks, 3 came in. We've also got new owners. First transfer window. Well, they came in during the January transfer window. It's the first transfer window that they've really. And we've spent 60 million without having to sell anyone, which is outrageous for Southampton. It's at the moment their biggest ever net transfer window. Yeah. So what's that telling you? That's telling you that one, we haven't lost any players from last season, and we're talking about a team here that I think has a high potential, and as we saw at the start of last season, had potential. But we've also got in a lot of high potential young talent.
Yes.
And judging by pre-season, they are already very good. And I would say some of these kids, 19, 20-year-olds, are already better than established Premier League players. Bazunu, for example, in goal is unreal. And he will be. I don't think we'll keep him. He'll go back to City. Yeah. On that buyback clause, because he is unreal.
But that's the game you're playing, isn't it? That's the whole point with these new signings.
This is the thing with these new signings, So I just think, while I can understand, look, realistic, and I would say if we get anywhere kind of 10th to 15th, I'd be happy, really. I would love for us to challenge top half of the table, but all the other teams around us they're good teams, and they bought wisely. But to think that we'd get relegated, I think, is very silly, and I think just shows a little bit of a kind of lack of investigating into your opinions about football teams, because how you could come up and say, I think team, it's an opinion, sure, but is it one that you've based on what? Because Southampton have been avoiding the relegation zone for, when was the last time we were up there? 17, 18? Yeah. So for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been avoiding the drop.
I like, sometimes I can see some logic when they're like, with some big defeats you've had, and Ralph on the teetering on the cliff edge sometimes. But I just think, especially this season, as you said, bringing in new coaching staff, bringing in all these exciting youngsters from, proven Premier League clubs when they're bringing in their really starlet academy players, and then some of the pre-season games you've had. I know pre-season doesn't usually count for anything, but I just think I don't see how they think you're any worse off than you were last year, and you still stayed up.
I tell you what it is, right? Last year we lost Danny Ings. Danny Ings, season before, was arguably our best player, and we lost him, and everyone was like, "Well, they're going to struggle." Right? Did we struggle? Yeah, a little bit towards the end of last season, but we were fine. This year it was Brozier. Yeah. Because that loan. Now I go out of my way and I'll say here, you know full well how I felt about Brozier towards. At the start of the season, first half, I thought it was absolutely fantastic, but it was very clear from January that he did not care. Right? And realistically, what have we lost? We've lost a 7-goal striker.
Yeah, it started off so well, and then, exactly, nothing really towards the end. And you've got players that are going to hopefully try and fill some of those gaps this year.
We signed Sekou Mara from Bordeaux, scored 6 goals in the Ligue 1 last season. He could score in the Premier League. I reckon I'd stick a 5 on him scoring 7 this year. replace Brozier's goals.
Yeah, and I just think the rest of the players you've got so far are, a good quality and are going to build that squad out. So I think it's harsh to do it, but I also see people's arguments all the time of, I see this year on year as well, and not just because obviously I, spend a lot of time watching football with you and hearing your opinion as a Southampton fan, but I do see this argument of people going, oh, well, it's about time they go down though, isn't it? And it's like, well, what are you basing that on? Like, just randomly going, there's a team that's flirted with the relegation zone a couple of times, okay, yeah, let's chuck them in. I just don't see it personally. So I think that's one.
It's not like they're a boring team to watch as well. Like, if anything, surely that would be they're one of the most fun teams to watch in neutral, because you don't know whether you're going to see Southampton get bashed 9-0 or see him beat fucking massive team 3-0.
Yeah, it's who knows? Who knows? It's one of them. Anyway, I am with you. I don't think that Southampton are going to go down. So let's move on to some teams that we think will go down or close to going down. So let's jump around a little bit, because sticking to a little bit of a narrative that I'm building here. Let's go. So the bottom two teams, I think we discussed it last week, so I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're thinking Bournemouth 20th and then Fulham 19th is a
100%,
pretty solid
100%.
shout. So that leaves a last slot. So this is what I want to talk about. Do you think that is going to be filled with the other promoted team, Nottingham Forest, or do you think someone else is going to slip into there?
In my heart, I think it's Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and we spoke about it last season,
yeah,
they've essentially just signed the whole new 11.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just don't think that's the sustainable way of playing.
Yeah.
And I think if you see some of the players, right, let's talk firstly, Dean Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal goalkeeper, but he's definitely got a chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure most people listening have watched the interview. There's definitely a chip on his shoulder, and you've got to be thinking, is that something that's be playing on his mind as he's playing?
Who knows?
If he has a bit of a bad game, is that and all of a sudden his form just takes a nosedive because in his head. You've got to think about these things, and then you've got to think Jesse Lingard. I think good signing, but he's very clearly gone there for the money. And I think a lot of people at the moment have questions on Lingard's professional attitude.
Yeah.
Because realistically, if you're Jesse Lingard and West Ham come in for you, why would you not go to West Ham, where you know that you'll be fighting for European space?
And fit in well and scored loads of goals.
And fit in well, scored loads of goals. Fan base love you. You go to Forest. You're going to Forest for the payday. That instantly gives me, well, he's not going to fight then, because he's only on a year contract. If Forest get relegated, it doesn't matter to him.
Yeah.
These are my concerns
about
Forest. I think they have bought some good players, but I just worry that spending that amount of money, and also I think as well, sometimes it happened to Fulham. You're going to break your wage structure and you're going to break your transfer record 2-3 times in one window, and you're rolling the dice on staying up, because if you don't stay up, the ramifications of it's going to screw you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. I mean, my head tells me you're correct, and it should be Forest, and it's going to be those ones put in. However, I think that there's 2 or 3 people. One of them, I actually think people have let go under the radar a little bit, which is Brentford, because I don't know where they're going to finish. They totally could have a second season syndrome and end up there as well, but I think they're going to escape it. I actually think the 2 teams that I want to talk about as like my last points actually will go below Brentford this season. One of them, I don't think we need to go too much on. We went into it last week, is Everton. I don't think anyone can say they're not going to be flirting with relegation zone, considering pre-season form, how they ended last season, transfers, and just also questions around Frank again, because it just doesn't seem to be working for him anywhere he goes. And if he can't get a team working together, some of it has to go on the management, not just the players.
Yeah, again, in my little list I've jotted down, I had Everton in that sort of low mid-table sort of section, between 14th and 17th. I think they're definitely going to struggle this season. They're going to flirt with relegation zone. I would put money on maybe Frank being the first.
Frank, first manager to go. I mean, that's a bold claim, but it's one that I totally could see happen, because if they get running results and they start where they picked off last season, then that's a choice for management to make. And I think they got a big name and it's going to happen for them. But if it doesn't work, they need to do everything they can to turn those points around, because they're going to be super close. But here's going to be my big shout, and I think lots of people might think, some people might go, you're way off. Again, I could be way off. This is just my pure gut feeling, and I could be totally wrong with egg on my face when it comes to last day of the season, right? But I think, as I said, my head tells me Forest, my heart tells me Leeds. I just, like, Jesse Marsh has come in, and I'm not sure about him as a coach anyway. I'm sure he might do okay, but the leagues, that he's been in before, he's done some good stuff with some teams, but is he that pedigree that's going to keep him out? I'm not sure. But also, he's gone for I'm going to buy loads of new players again, but I don't think, again, this could be super harsh of me, and some people might be saying, oh, you're doing what I know people do Southampton, and it's lack of knowledge, it's all this stuff. But he's bought teams that he's obviously known from lots of German players, and then using some of the contacts that he's had with the feeder clubs when it was like an American coach and stuff like that over there. But I just think that they're not going to gel. They're really going to miss Phillips, and they're really going to miss Rafina, and they're going to be the things that are going to be the difference. And I wouldn't have thought it, but the more I've thought about it, the more I'm just like, I can see them having a poor season, and I could just see Forest. I know what you're saying about the money, and my head tells me that, but my heart says they bought signings which are expensive and can totally go wrong. But if it goes right, they should just escape with people like Hendo and Lingard and other players keeping them up. So that's my bold prediction, that it could be Leeds that join them there.
I had Leeds in 17th, so I'm not a million miles away from you.
Yeah,
I think they're going to struggle, and they've made good signings. Yeah, they spent money. Clubs spend money all the time.
Yeah,
if you ask me, it kind of macks a little bit of desperation.
Yeah, and I just think it's again, it will either work for them and it will absolutely work, or it won't, and that's only time will tell. Is there anyone else you want to talk about, or is that pretty much the main people we want to cover?
I think that's the main people we want to cover. I think the rest of the teams out there, your Wolves, your Palaces, your Brighton.
Yeah,
I think they're gonna be kind of between 8th and, well, obviously between 8th and 15th.
Yeah, and I agree. And you could put them, and most people have put them in very different orders. I don't think Brighton will do as well this season. I'm unsure how well Palace will do. They could do better, they could do worse, I'm not sure. But like all of that, again, it's very up in the air. They're going to be, as you said, in that slot, and it's just who comes where. I think we've talked about the interesting ones kind of with the right at the bottom and right at the top, and any that we think are, and maybe some overreaching for certain European spots. But before we finish this episode, actually, I do want to bring up, obviously, the biggest story in world football, and that is absolutely that is the correct thing to say, because we had a extremely momentous occasion where England have won the Women's Euro. So a massive congratulations to the Lionesses. You have done not only England proud, but women's football extremely proud. And, that is going to be something that we hope to see just push on and get bigger and bigger and bigger. It was extremely well-deserved and has given the nation a bit of a lift. Yeah,
it's phenomenal. And I think it's just such a good news story. Firstly, it's come home.
It's come home.
And I don't think anyone would have expected us to be saying that about the women's team. So, do you know what? I'm absolutely floored that it's happened, and I was as giddy as I would have been had it been the men's team. So, absolutely phenomenal. I think the standard of football they played was outrageously.
Smashing people, having the best defensive record, like when we're supposed to be having, this is a ridiculously hard semi-final, quarter-final fixture, and then just blowing people out the water, not just like beating them, like decimating teams. And considering I think we were like 6th or 8th in the world rankings, and then people were saying it's going to be Germany, France, or Sweden, and then what happened, and people doing this. Like, I actually went into that final, obviously had the nerves, but I was like, we've got this. We've looked so much better than everyone else.
Honestly, I felt a calm that I haven't felt watching that.
Yeah.
Because I felt like, they go out there, they've got the ability, they've got the skill, not only that, but they've got the resilience. You know, the Germans pulled one back, and they still had it in them to dig deep, and get that winner. Because there was that part of me that was like, oh,
here we go,
penalties against the Germans in the final.
Well, precisely. I mean, that storyline was there.
But yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And the spotlight that is put on women's football just been. And I can't even begin to imagine how many little opportunities, or how many women now never got the opportunity when they were
precisely. And you've seen lots of those stories come out.
Exactly right. And even I remember from us playing football, I could probably think of one or two girls. With us and around us, and even going into school and college, there was I could probably count on the amount of women who played football. Yeah, and it's for teams, and and to be fair to some of them,
oh, you cut out a little bit.
Oh, sorry, apologies. So to be fair, some of those girls that we played with went on to play at a very decent level. Yeah,
well, I was going to say I can think of one person that probably meant even more for lots of people, but someone who I used to go to school with, the only girl on the playground that wanted to play football. So big shout out to Yasmin Bunter. Plays for FC Basel now. She's a professional football player. Absolutely smashing it over there, and I'm sure she was absolutely over the moon for that. But yeah, exactly, it opens up those doors. We've got this year, for example, in FIFA, it's not only that it's not only the women's national teams, you've got women's clubs teams coming into it as well, more recognition, all this kind of stuff. The pricing's fantastic, the family atmosphere is fantastic at the women's games compared to the men's, which is only a positive compared to the negative that absolutely goes with the men's side of it. So yeah, it's just one of them. So we just
one thing I would like to just point out is there was I think it was Alex Scott, big comment about how a lot of clubs in the UK didn't let the women's Euros play at their stadiums, and I think that's very poor show to those clubs out there. And I really hope now that this kind of shown them the error of their ways. Because I don't think there was a club in the top 6 that let them play in their game.
Old Trafford had one of the games.
Old Trafford had one of the games. Brilliant, fantastic, well played. Massive stadiums, Tottenham Stadium, the new White Hart Lane, the Emirates, Anfield, massive stadiums that could have, really packed in the fans, because there is that hunger to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think anything can be said more than the simple fact of the the women's final at Wembley is the most attended final of any Euro game, regardless of gender. So that just says it all. Like, there is absolutely people there to watch. I think they're only going to get more fans down with the pricing and the hype around it, and absolutely it's going to be great. And let's just keep that positive momentum and keep all those negative thoughts that unfortunately have also surfaced, but they've been massively drowned out by all the positivity. So that's just amazing. But yeah, well done, Lionesses, again. I think that's it. So that's been just another quick episode. Obviously, the big one. We are back next week, season 3 of the Roundup Review. We are very excited, not only to record the pod, but also we're just very, very happy that the Premier League's back, and excited to see how that story starts to unfold. So, as usual, thank you very much, Rich, for coming on. Always appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, as always, mate.
And don't forget, if you have been liking this content, give us a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, or we're on Spotify. So give us, a follow over there, 5-star reviews. We're on TikTok, Twitter, all that kind of good stuff. So go follow us. It's in the link tree down below. So have a good rest of your week. It's not many days left. I hope your team has a good start to the season, and let's enjoy some football. Thanks very much.